Hi, so today's video is gonna be about work again. It's kind of the topic on my mind lately. So if you've seen the previous video, I was talking about my identity, my work, and how disentangling work from capitalism has basically helped me see how I'm actually somebody who enjoys doing work. Work in its purest form just being something I like to exert effort on to see something being done. So it can just be like putting in effort, time, energy, care into doing something and having some sort of creation, tangible or intangible, being born out of it. So that is what I mean by work. So if we take work as separate from capitalism, I do quite enjoy work. And what I've recently observed is that I've kind of come back full circle. So let me start with where I started off with work at first. So I think what I've known for a long time about how I like to do work is that I'm somebody who enjoys efficiencies. I enjoy things being done well. I tend to have a high expectation of my own work. And I think the kind of quality that I generally expect of something, especially in a like a workplace setting in which I work for somebody else, my expectation of what I think is a job well done is generally higher than what people would typically expect. So that has always been kind of like how I've approached work. I enjoy working, so to me it's like I like to see a job well done, like for its own sake. It's less about trying to please the employer that I'm working for and more of just I enjoy seeing something done well for its own sake, and I like to be the one to do that thing. So that has always been my relation with work, and infused in all of that is of course liking efficiency, liking productivity, and here I use the word productivity sort of interchangeably with efficiency and effectiveness in a non-capitalist way, in that I enjoy when there's some optimization to things. So I think all along I've sort of known that that has been my baseline towards work. But I did sway quite a bit away from this for a while. So the thing that I've gotten a bit better at, so kind of like going 180 degrees away from this notion of productivity and work, is this idea of like embracing my creative process. And like when I say embracing my creative process, I really mean like, you know, like really letting, if you imagine a creative process as a seed you plant into the ground, you really have to, like, there's only so much you can do, right? You plant it well, cover it with soil, water it as needed, but you still have to wait for it to grow. And the conditions in which it's growing, you have some influence over it, but not full control. And how it's going to come out when it's fully grown, you also don't have full control. So you kind of just have to like wait it out. And learning to wait it out, to be patient, to basically cultivate a creative process, I would say has been something that I've gotten much better at, something that I was learning for quite a few years. And it's definitely something I've gotten better at. If you've never read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, it's where I get my inspiration, or my guide for how to do this. And like that has honestly, I guess, rehabilitated the way I've looked at work. In the sense of like, I don't need it to always be a certain like super high quality. I don't need it to always be like productive or effective. And so in embracing the artist's way, I've basically gotten a bit more comfortable with what was once an unfamiliar process of letting like if you get from point A to point B, my first way of working would be always trying to find the most efficient way to go from A to B, so that would just be like the straight across, the shortcut. But in learning to create and cultivate and be patient with a creative process, or specifically my creative process, I have come to be more okay. And it's still uncomfortable, but I've gotten better at sitting with the discomfort of letting things unfold. So going from point A to point B, instead of like, having a bird's eye view of knowing A to B, this is the straight line across. When I'm in a mode where I'm really like embracing the process, the creative process, meandering as it may be, I liken it to something like when you're at point A, you're really seeing it like from where you are standing here right now, and you kind of only have a torch, like you only shine, and you can only see what's in front of you because everything else is dark, and you just kind of have to like take it like a few steps at a time, and only when you move a bit closer can you see that maybe there's a fork in the road, but you have no idea where each turn leads, and the only way you can find out is by physically walking through. And then let's say you go through this and then it leads to a dead end, you have to backtrack, come back to the fork and then go the other way. And in doing that, you would take time, right? That's the more neutral way to put it. The me of the past would say that you would have lost time. And I think that is a mindset that is pretty common in a capitalist way of thinking about work. So you would think, that detour was, not worth it. You didn't learn anything from it. But that is not entirely true, and that's something that I've only been able to find out because I have allowed myself to try and physically experience the creative path. So the creative path of like really trying, like I don't know what would lead me where, and I just trust that like if I just keep going, I would eventually find my way to point B, even though I really only have a small torchlight that lights up a few steps in front of me. So in the sense of like maybe the immediate output of the work done, you might think this particular detour is kind of like nonsensical, a waste of time. But in the greater scheme of like yourself as a person, knowing yourself, you being a project in which you are learning about yourself, you are cultivating the artist within yourself, the creator within yourself, I mean, whatever it is, the different aspects of you, that detour actually has shed some light on the kind of person that you are and how you work. And if you really like sit down and observe, you can see a lot about yourself. So I think that has been a very fruitful journey for me. And of course, I think as with most things, I've kind of like after I've gotten familiar with this kind of more meandering creative path, it's easy to think for a period of time that like, hey, maybe this is my new norm, maybe this is my new way of being. And what's interesting is recently I was doing a part-time job, and basically the short of it is, as I was doing that job, I started to remember how much I hate inefficiencies and how it was just like annoying, and it got me thinking like, oh, I thought I've gotten over that. I thought I've gotten over this whole idea of like inefficiency is bad and bad only. But I think it's not entirely true, because in that particular context, I really didn't enjoy the inefficiencies, and I was trying to figure out like what is the key factor as to why I'm able to embrace a creative process in which there is no fixed timeline as to how things will go, but why I get so annoyed and frustrated with inefficiency in a particular part-time F&B setting, right? And what I think the key difference is really about volume. So the volume of work done, or the number of repetitions, if you want to put it that way. So with things like a creative process, I think it works better when it's kind of like your first time doing stuff. It's something that you've never tried before. It's unfamiliar. You need to give it time. It's your first time planting this seed. You need to give it time to see how it grows. Or it's your first time, even if it's a seed that you've planted before, you're planting it now in a foreign land, different soil, different climate. And you just need to give it time and observe and like let things play out as they do, and just learn to be patient and sit with that discomfort. And that's all fine and dandy. But it's kind of more for like one-off or not frequent processes, right? Like, if I make coffee and I have to keep going from this point to that point to get from the sink to my kettle, and then if I make 1 cup, it's fine, right? But if I want to make more than 1 cup, if I want to make 10, 20, 30, 100 cups, the fact that the sink is located so far away from the kettle and so far away from where I need to serve the coffee, I mean, this is just a hypothetical example, but like the fact that everything is so far away and you have to keep crossing the space multiple times just to do what you want, then that's when I think the inefficiency starts to get to me, because it feels like the inefficiency is actually preventing me from being able to do the work that I want to do. And what I mean by that is, I think ultimately the thing that is common that ties everything together is actually the fact that I want to work. I enjoy the work, and I want to be in a state in which I can be in the flow of the work, right? But there is a slightly different flow of work when it is a kind of more infrequent one-off thing versus when it's something that is done repeatedly at volumes. So what I mean to say is, when I'm in the flow for this kind of more infrequent processes, being in the flow means I really commit to the fact that it's a meandering process, that I need to be patient, that I need to do all this stuff. But committing to the workflow in a high volume, high frequency, high repetition kind of situation, to be able to stay in that flow and not be taken out of it and feel like I'm out of the flow state, and that, you know, it's making the fact that I want to work unnecessarily difficult, means I actually have to look at all the inefficiencies and root them out so that there is much less friction to the actual flow of the work. Like, I think the same spirit is in both of these methods of working, which is that I want to do my work and I want to do it well, and I want to do it in a way in which I'm in flow state and I am, you know, like focused, locked in, really just like able to fully enjoy being in the moment of doing that work. And what it looks like for different types of work is different, and it's like neither one is good or bad or whatever. They just kind of work differently for different situations. And I think it's really been a journey to go from being somebody who's really focused on efficiency and that being my only way of working, to being able to become somebody who's also patient with themselves, being able to take not always the most comfortable linear route, to be okay with taking circuitous, meandering, non-linear, unmapped territories, and being able to deal with that. And now coming to a point where I don't like straight up just reject productivity and efficiencies and all that, but really like sort of taking a step back from all of that and realizing, hey, all of this are ways in which I work and ways in which I enjoy working, and that the common thread tying all of this together is really that I just want to find the best way to enjoy being able to work. So there has been a recent realization. I don't think this is always going to be, how do I put this? I don't think this would be the end of it. Like, I don't think this is like a final conclusion in terms of me and how I treat work and all that stuff. But I think this is an interesting enough realization for now that I wanted to record it down and just like put a timestamp in the journey of my life to kind of remember that this is where I am at now regarding myself and work. And that's all I have for this video. Let me know what you think. This is Kian from option C. See you next time. Bye.